The federal government remains shut down for what is now the longest stretch in U.S. history. Lawmakers in Washington are struggling to find a solution, while millions of Americans face the direct effect of frozen programs and unpaid work. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett, a Democrat from Texas, says Democrats need a specific mechanism in any agreement that guarantees the administration follows through on its commitments. In her words, "We need a trigger." She explains that while the president might sign a bill into law, his administration could still choose not to enforce its provisions. Crockett argues that Democrats must include an automatic legal or financial trigger in the legislation to ensure that if the White House fails to act, the beneficiaries of those programs can take the issue to court. Crockett points out that this idea is not new. During the Biden administration, certain programs were structured so that if deadlines or targets weren't met, additional funding automatically kicked in. She believes similar provisions could protect working families now. "We're talking about the basic needs of the people, money for food, health care, stability," she says. "We have to be smarter about the way we negotiate." The issue of trust remains uncertain. Crockett admits she cannot say with confidence that such triggers would be honored, but stresses that having them in law would at least give advocacy groups and affected families legal standing to fight back. The current crisis over SNAP benefits, federal food assistance that supports more than 40 million Americans, illustrate her concern. A federal judge recently ordered the administration to fully fund the program after officials announced that only partial payments would be made. Vice President J.D. Vance denounced the decision as absurd, and the Justice Department plans to appeal. For Crockett, the episode symbolizes a moral gap in the current leadership. "It breaks my heart," she says. "People wake up every day to new nightmares created by their own government." Representing a district of more than 760,000 people, many struggling economically, Crockett feels the weight of the shutdown personally. She describes it as painful to know that the same voters who trusted her to fight for them are now the ones most affected by Washington's gridlock. "We know the numbers," she says. "We know exactly who is getting hurt. It's our constituents." She adds that Democrats are often fighting harder for Republican voters than the Republicans they elected. Whether the issue is food assistance or health care, she argues Democratic lawmakers are working to protect families across the political spectrum while GOP representatives abandon their own communities. Crockett warns that Americans have short memories and often forget who was responsible for their hardship by the time the next election arrives. "You can't relax," she says. "The Grim Reaper is lurking, and right now, that Grim Reaper is the president and his minions." Her language reflects both frustration and urgency. For her, the shutdown is not just a policy failure but a moral one, evidence of a government losing touch with its basic duty to its people. When asked whether the breaking point might come not from SNAP cuts or healthcare chaos but from disruptions to air travel, Crockett agrees. She recalls that in a previous shutdown, it was the air traffic controllers who effectively ended the stalemate by walking off the job. Although laws have since been changed to limit their ability to strike, she believed that problems in air travel could once again become the trigger that forces action. "We're already seeing delays, canceled flights, and chaos at airports," she notes. "People are patient until it starts to affect them directly." Crockett praises the dedication of federal workers who continue to report to duty despite uncertainty about when they'll be paid. "They could walk away, but they don't," she says. Meanwhile, members of Congress are still getting paid. If anyone isn't working, it's the House. She blames a Republican speaker for refusing to bring members back to pass the 12 appropriations bills needed to fund the government. "He could have done the work," she says. Instead, he's decided to prioritize protecting pedophiles. Her accusation reflects anger toward what she sees as political cowardice and misplaced priorities. Crockett's critique extends beyond process. She argues that the shutdown reveals deeper dysfunction, a willingness to let ordinary Americans suffer for the sake of political posturing. "We could have opened parts of the government gradually," she says. "We could have been working, but leadership chose not to." Despite the frustration, she remains focused on building accountability into any deal that emerges. Her emphasis on triggers and enforceable measures reflects a broader Democratic push to limit executive overreach. Crockett sees it as essential not only for this crisis but for protecting democratic norms in the long run. "We can't depend on good faith anymore," she says. "We need laws that guarantee results." For her, the battle in Washington is about more than reopening the government. It's about proving that democracy can still function, that Congress can still fight for the people who rely on it most. We're supposed to make the American dream possible, she says quietly. Instead, people are waking up to nightmares. That's not acceptable. As the shutdown deepens, the consequences are spreading far beyond food and healthcare programs. Flights are being canceled, travelers are stranded, and delays are rippling through major airports. The chaos in the skies, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett believes, might be what finally forces action. People can ignore a lot until it hits them personally, she says. When the flights stop moving, that's when everyone starts paying attention. Crockett points to history as her evidence. During the previous record-setting shutdown, it was air traffic controllers and federal aviation employees who ultimately pressured Washington to reopen. They made the country realize how essential they were, she explains. Now, the laws have been changed so that workers can't organize or protest in the same way. But even so, the system can only take so much. The situation is a reminder of how fragile the nation's infrastructure becomes when the government stops functioning. For Crockett, the loyalty and sacrifice of federal employees are both inspiring and infuriating. These people are showing up for work every day with no guarantee they'll be paid soon, she says. They could leave and get jobs elsewhere. They were underpaid to begin with. And meanwhile, members of Congress are still getting their checks. She contrasts their dedication with what she calls the indifference of House leadership. If there's anyone not working right now, it's the House, she says. We should be in session, passing the 12 appropriations bills that keep government running. She blames the Republican Speaker for refusing to bring members back to vote. According to her, the House could have passed each funding bill individually, sending them to the Senate to be approved in stages, gradually reopening parts of the government. That's what responsible leadership would do, Crockett argues. But instead, he's prioritizing political protection for people who don't deserve it. The Speaker has failed to lead, plain and simple. The Congresswoman's frustration echoes across Washington, where growing numbers of lawmakers privately express concern that the shutdown is damaging not only the economy but also public faith in the government. Federal workers, airport staff, and contractors are being forced to choose between loyalty and survival. Crockett calls their perseverance heroic but unsustainable. We can't keep expecting people to sacrifice indefinitely, she says. We owe them more than gratitude. We owe them paychecks. The last time air travel chaos became the breaking point, it forced both parties to face the economic cost of political stubbornness. Crockett believed that moment may be near again. We're seeing the same signs, she warns. Airports are becoming the next front line in this crisis. She adds that the shutdown is not just about politics. It's about real lives being disrupted, from single parents relying on SNAP benefits to workers guiding planes safely across the country. This is not abstract, she says. This is every American's reality now. Still, she holds out some hope that public pressure will eventually force the House and Senate to act. The people have power when they demand accountability, she says. That's what it's going to take. The debate over the shutdown has also reignited old tensions within the Republican Party. Unexpectedly, one of the voices echoing some of Crockett's frustration is Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. In a rare moment of bipartisan agreement, Greene criticized her own party's failure to stay in Washington and work through the crisis. It's pathetic that we're not here solving this, Greene said. We need to focus on affordability and health insurance. For Crockett, that statement was almost surreal. Hell may have frozen over, she joked, because we're agreeing more than we're not. Yet, she quickly pointed out what she called hypocrisy behind Greene's words. The same big ugly bill that contributed to rising insurance premiums, Crockett reminds viewers, passed with Greene's vote. If one more Republican had defected, that bill would have failed, she says. Marjorie Taylor Greene voted for it, and her constituents are among the ones now suffering. Crockett explains that the legislation in question removed roughly $1 trillion from the healthcare system, driving up costs for everyone while benefiting the wealthiest Americans. We warned them, she says. We told them that millions would lose health care, between 15 and 17 million people. When you strip $1 trillion out of the system, someone has to make up that gap, and it's working people who do. She accuses Republicans of prioritizing tax cuts for the top 1% while leaving ordinary Americans behind. We're seeing record profits at the top, she says. Elon Musk might become the first trillionaire in history, and yet people can't afford a doctor's visit. Adding to the crisis, Crockett says Republicans are now allowing key tax subsidies for health care to expire while making tax cuts for the wealthy permanent. If you're on the healthcare marketplace, your premiums might go from $200 to $1,000 a month, she explains. And the small credit that helped offset those costs, around $250 a month, they want to take that away too. For her, it's a clear example of punishing the poor to reward the rich. They are kicking people while they are down, she says. That's not governance. That's cruelty. The issue of affordability, healthcare, food, and housing has become the defining theme for Democrats after a series of strong showings in recent local elections. Crockett sees it as a blueprint for the next campaign. People are tired of empty promises, she says. They want results. If we keep fighting for affordability, we can win. Her focus is not just on politics but on communication, how to explain clearly who is responsible for the economic pain families are feeling. Crockett warns that Democrats must be ready for another wave of misinformation. She points to the ongoing Supreme Court review of Trump-era tariffs, which have contributed to higher prices for everyday goods. Those tariffs were illegal from the start, she says. They are one of the main reasons life has become more expensive. She worries that if the court overturns them and prices drop, some voters will mistakenly credit the former president rather than the legal system. We can't let that happen, she insists. If there's any relief, it won't be because of him. It'll be because the Supreme Court intervened. Though Crockett has often been critical of the conservative court, she says fairness requires acknowledging when it makes the right call. If I'm giving credit to the Supreme Court, that means they earned it, she says. Her larger point is about communication. Democrats, she argues, must do a better job explaining policy outcomes in real terms, connecting each decision in Washington to its impact on ordinary lives. Her advice extends to newly elected leaders like Mayor-elect Manny, who has faced intense criticism and online attacks similar to what Crockett has experienced. He doesn't need my advice, she says. He's a master communicator. He could teach a masterclass to Democrats. She praises his ability to speak from the heart, focusing on working people rather than billionaires. When the working class thrives, everyone thrives, she says. Even the wealthy benefit when workers have stability. Crockett believes Democrats can learn from his approach, speaking directly, organizing broadly, and not writing off any voter. We have to stop only talking to the people who already agree with us, she says. We have to go into places where Democrats aren't expected to win and make our case. During the last presidential campaign, she pushed the party to send her to rural America. I lived in East Texas, she explains. I understand it. Those voters need to hear from us too. As for her own future, Crockett is candid but cautious. Asked whether she plans to run for the Senate, she says the decision is still under consideration. We're evaluating that, she confirms. But she also hints that her ambitions go beyond personal advancement. My priority will always be Texans, whether rural or urban, she says. People need to understand that we have more in common than divides us. That's a message I want to carry. Crockett's tone throughout reflects both determination and exhaustion. She is deeply frustrated by dysfunction in Washington, but still believes that accountability and transparency can restore faith in government. Her repeated call for triggers in legislation symbolizes a broader demand for enforceable responsibility, not just promises or speeches. In her view, the American people have been let down too often by leaders who sign bills and then ignore them. As the shutdown continues, she remains one of the more visible Democratic voices connecting national policy failures to everyday struggles. Her emphasis on affordability, justice, and fairness resonates with voters facing higher bills, fewer benefits, and shrinking opportunities. We are supposed to make the American dream real, she says. Instead, people are living nightmares. That's not what public service should mean. Crockett's words capture the central tension in American politics today, a country that remains wealthy but increasingly divided over who that wealth serves. For her, the solution lies in honest communication, clear accountability, and a willingness to confront hypocrisy on all sides. Whether she stays in the House or runs for the Senate, her message is likely to remain the same: fight for working people, demand fairness, and never assume the system will fix itself.